this morning has not really gone how I expected this morning to go. And church has a funny way of doing that, I think, doesn't it? Especially when the first prayer is, "Come, Holy Spirit," you kind of get derailed a little bit, don't you, from what you planned? Yeah, I know, exactly. And I wasn't going to share what I'm going to share now, but I think that Anne has made me share it. Not Anne personally, but what Anne said. And her dream that she had last night is almost exactly what we discussed on Tuesday as a leadership team. And I wasn't going to share this because I was going to wait till our retreat weekend, but I'm going to share it now anyway because it was almost exactly what Anne had been sharing. And so while we're at New Wine, God was speaking to me lots, as he was everyone there personally, but I am in a unique position that I am pastor of Portsmouth Christian Fellowship, and so he was not just speaking to me personally, but also as church leader, pastor of Portsmouth Christian Fellowship. And so I had two very distinct pictures that God gave me, and I've spent the last 6 weeks or so trying to figure out exactly what God is saying, what is of God and what isn't, what he means by what he's saying by these pictures. And I was making some really good progress up until about 2 weeks ago. And then 2 weeks ago, I was like, right, God, I've got the picture. I've got what I think you're saying through it. I've got kind of like what it means. Now, what do you want us to do with that? And then God didn't say anything for 2 weeks until we came to a leadership meeting where we had a chat about it. And so I haven't got the answers to what I'm about to share, but I still think that this is what God is calling us into. And it is very, very similar to what Anne had shared in her dream. And so the first picture was of the church, sort of, but people from church, no one specific, on the beach. And there was this big concrete slab in the middle of this sandy beach, and it was this really firm, robust foundation. And there were people there building sandcastles on it, and there were some like little sandcastles that were pretty cool, and there were these sort of amazing, huge sandcastles, like the Barcelona Cathedral, with all the like weird and wacky sort of turrets and spires and little stick-on bits. There was ones like that and these little ones. And they had a wonderful day at the beach, building these sandcastles on this concrete slab. And then they all kind of went home for their tea. And the tide comes in and washes them all away. And then they came back the next day. But when they came back the next day, instead of putting sand and building sandcastles, instead one person placed one brick. Then the tide comes in, comes away again, and another person puts one brick on. And this kind of kept happening till slowly this wall started to be built. And so that was the first picture. We had this beach with this concrete slab of foundation, sandcastles being washed away, and then bricks being placed on that foundation. The second picture that God gave me was of this amazing sort of European Gothic castle set in the woods, surrounded by trees, and this nice wiggling path going up to it. And we, as a church, were kind of on our way up this wiggling path, and we came into the castle. It was all amazing and castle-like. And we came into the banquet hall, and it was like, oh, wow, look at this banquet hall. There was the table laid out, there was the hog roast in the middle, there was all the trimmings, all the sides, there was like the golden cutlery, there was the chandeliers, there was the flags, and there was the discussion among people from church. Again, no like specific people, just I knew that it was people from church. And then they're going, oh, look at the choice, this is amazing. Wow, we are in for a treat today. This is amazing. They're all egging each other on, going, what are we going to try first? And then the camera slowly pans out to a rickety old table with a bunch of baby bottles on it. And then the conversation continued going, oh, there's semi-skimmed, there's full fat, there's almond milk, there's coconut milk. Look at this, we are spoilt for choice. And of course, the point being that they all missed this ginormous feast that had been laid out for them on the table behind. And so, just like Anne's picture, I think these three or two pictures and a dream really relate to one another. That God is actually calling us into something deeper. There is not it wasn't a conviction, it wasn't a condemnation that we're on milk, but an encouragement that this table has been laid out for us. So don't choose milk when you can have a few crushed berries. And then when you've got onto the crushed berries, you can try and not crushed berries. And then maybe when you're feeling really brave, we can have a little bit of salmon, because that's easy to chew and eat, isn't it? And you kind of get where this goes. And I share with the team as well that I kind of imagine this table in the human having like different stages and grades, that as you got to the far end, you had the hog roast there, and you had the steak with the truffle oil and the chips and all the rest of it. And at the other end, there was the crushed berries. And all of us are on somewhere on that table. But the invitation is to not be ignorant of the fact of the kind of next step, if you like. And then the sandcastle one, again, it was the fact that we've got this really firm gospel foundation. We know our stuff, we know our Bible, although I've left mine somewhere. It's over here. We know our Bible. We know who Jesus is. We know what he's about. And we keep building then these sandcastles that still get washed away. And so they might be impressive in the short term, but God is calling us to do simple bricks, one at a time. And then slowly we might end up with a wall, which will be still unimpressive. But then after you have a few more walls, you then might get a little sort of cubby hole. And a cubby hole is still not that impressive, but you kind of fast forward down the line and we come back to our Barcelona Cathedral. We come back to this elaborate structure, this really impressive feat, not for our own glory, not for our own ego, but because of what God is doing. If I missed anything out, leadership team, that I told you on Tuesday, I don't think so. Oh, it was a rickety table. That's right. It wasn't. It was this beaten up thing that was falling down with the milk bottles on, compared to this huge, wonderful, well-laid table. So that was not what I was going to share this morning, but I thought it kind of fits nicely with what has been said. And so then, as a leadership team, I said, I've had 2 weeks of trying to figure out what we do. I don't know what we do. So, leadership team, what should we do? And we kind of talked a little bit and processed together. And a big part of that was focusing more on meaty teaching. And I use the word very intentional now because of that picture. We're not going for milky teaching or crushed berries teaching, but meaty teaching. Exactly, something to get your teeth into, yeah. And so in my somewhat different draft now, I talked about when we did Romans and 1 Corinthians, and it was something that we could all kind of get our teeth into a bit more, get stuck in with. Although, because it's a bit meatier and because it's a bit challenging, to use a kind of crude picture, there is the choking hazard of trying new food. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, and I'm going to deliberately and intentionally challenge you, not necessarily push your buttons, but buttons may be pushed. And so part of us growing in faith, part of us laying those bricks is going to be more hard work than building a sandcastle, and it's going to be more hard work than going on milk. But ultimately, I think we all kind of agree this is where God is calling us into this time, however long it may be, of more serious, more meaty teaching. There we go. So I wasn't going to share any of that, but there we go. You can process that with me and with others if you like. And if you have anything that you'd like to suggest, or you think that God may be speaking to us about that, then I'd love to know. I'd love to chat about it with you.